my favorite time to start is that moment I realize I'm awake. And I realize that it's an opportunity to set some intentions and to embody some qualities of a spiritual practice. And I know I've talked about these before, but qualities such as presence, like being right here, right now. Could you imagine if I were engaged in this conversation with you, but my mind was on maybe something that happened yesterday or planned for this afternoon as soon as we get off? But no, my commitment every day is to be right here, right now with you. And so I invite every morning, I invite presence, present moment awareness. I invite contentment. And yes, there's so much to do, and there's so many things to accomplish, and there's so many goals to reach. And of course, there's so many arguments to win and fights to fight. But on some level, when we get everything we think we need to be happy, there's going to be some more stuff that we need. So I like to invite that feeling of contentment. Like, here I am. This is it. I am full. I am here and happy and present and content. So before I even really open my eyes in the morning, that's when my spiritual practice starts. And I invite you to consider that time. Instead of waking up alarmed and jumping out of bed, and your first thought is, I don't have enough money, time, friends, or food, whatever it may be. Instead of that, invite that fullness of the moment, that fullness of being present, that fullness of being content. And then, of course, appreciating your life, whether you call it gratitude or appreciation. I like to invite that sense of appreciation that I get to live another moment. I get to be here another day. With so many people suffering, and I know a lot of people have passed away in our lives this past year, whether it was from COVID or just the natural order of things. Being alive another day is such a gift. And I know you know that, but I like to bring my attention to that when I wake up in the morning. So, a practice I'd love for you to consider doing is really embracing that for the first few moments of waking up in the morning, really embracing the first few moments of waking up and deciding what your touchstones are going to be that day. Now, those are my three: being present, being content, and appreciating my life. And sometimes it's something else, but I invite you to think about, what is it that you want to have as your touchstone throughout the day. So I'm so glad you're here. We're on day 15 of the Feast for the Soul. My name is Sarah McLean, and I am the director of the feast right now. And I love doing this every year. Now we're in our 14th year, and this is the first time we've been really virtually doing this. It used to be that we would round up some faculty members and ask them to record 40 meditations for you. And a lot of those are still available to you 24/7 on the Feast for the Soul website. But now we get to practice together. And if you happen to miss a few of these, or if today's your very first day and you want the other 14 days before this, you can go to the YouTube channel, which I'll put a few of the links in the chat. Or if you're getting our newsletter, you can find those on there. I put a little button in there. So I'm glad you're here. How are you? I invite you to put your name and maybe where you're sitting in the chat today. And maybe if you're new to the feast. I'm so glad that we all know how to use Zoom. At least most of us know how to use Zoom. But if you want to have the experience of changing up your view, on the top corner on the right, you'll see a little button that says view, and you can switch back and forth. And I love to be on the gallery view. So I love to see all these faces. And I know there's over 90 of us now, and people are coming and going. And generally speaking, and I know you know this, many of you, is we're going to be together about 45 minutes or so. And I'm going to talk a little bit more, talk about the practice we're going to do today, which I was inspired by this morning after I asked the question of myself, when does spiritual practice start during the day? Then I thought, well, what practice do I want to lead today for you? And I just kind of wait for the answer. A little bit like Laurel was doing yesterday, is kind of waiting for some intel, waiting for the signs and wonders. And today I thought about a man that has written a beautiful book called The Soul Awakening Prayer. His name is James O'Day. He's a mystic for sure. And last year we had him on as part of our Feast for the Soul faculty, and he guided us into a prayer. And today I wanted to invite you to do this prayer with us, all of us today. But it's called the Soul Awakening Prayer. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is. So I know some of you have been on these calls where I think it was the day before yesterday. Was it Elaine who did this, where she had us imagine a still pond and tossing either a crystal into it or tossing a pebble into it? But this practice is something that's called a sutra practice. The word sutra, as in yoga sutras, the word sutra means stitch. It's from the root word suture. So what the practice is to stitch an intention into the stillness that you create with your personal practice. Now, it can be a prayer that you use, an affirmation that you might use. Laurel used some yesterday. And we're going to use James O'Day's prayer for awakening as the sutras, as the desires, as the intentions that we stitch to the silence and presence that we create in our practice. So I'm going to share with you a few of these sutras before we practice, and before we invite them into the practice, we're going to basically get into that mindful awareness. So we create that stillness in the pond, the stillness in your mind. Now, remember this about meditation. Meditation does create the settling of the mind, the settling of the mental activity, but it's not because you will it to cease or you will your mind to stop thinking. That's impossible. Instead, what we like to do with meditation is invite the practice to let the mind settle, to let the mind and the body settle down, to reach that natural state of your awareness, which is settled and present and content and loving and appreciative. And so that's what we'll do first, is we'll move into a mind-body practice that settles the nervous system, and then we'll invite these sutras. Now, let me go over some of these sutras before we invite them, because I think that you'll find them delicious, delightful. The first sutra is Soul Awakening. So when I invite you to use these sutras after our first part of the meditation practice, consider that a sutra is a phrase that you could teach from. The Yoga Sutras, for instance, are 200 sutras, each one a short line that the oral tradition was built upon. These sutras contain within them all kinds of intelligence. And so the first one is Soul Awakening. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about a soul. What is it? Who is it? I wrote the book Soul Centered. I worked for a man, Gary Zukav, who wrote Seed of the Soul. I didn't even know what a soul was. Deepak Chopra used to talk about soul all the time. I went into the Zen Buddhist monastery, and there's no such thing as a soul in that particular realm. And what is it? Well, the simple answer is it's what's looking through your eyes. It's that intelligence, that presence, that love that lives through you as you. Now, you have your own definition for it. And in our teacher training program, I always invite those in the program to come up with their own definition. So that's a good inquiry for you. But the first sutra is Soul Awakening, that source of existence that's living through you, that you awaken to. The second sutra is Heart Opening. Heart Opening. I'm not talking about just your heart, but the universal heart that's called to awaken during these difficult times that we're all experiencing in some fashion, whether it's through COVID or lockdowns or loss, personal loss or challenges. And so we're going to invite the sutra Heart Opening. And I like to imagine when I do this, When I close my eyes, I like to imagine that each one of us has this bright star, this bright light.
Sarah, you've muted.
We can't hear you, Sarah. No. No.
Do you want to try some headphones?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, good. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure where I left off. We must be.
You were naming the bright star?
The bright star. So I like to imagine if we were in a dark room, that each one of us has this brightness shining from the center of our being, your heart center. So just imagine that. And so that's the second sutra, is heart opening. The third is light shining. That primordial light force, that light that's in you, that kundalini, that electricity that shines through you as you. That's the third sutra. It's the light of the universe and the light of understanding and the light of connection. The fourth sutra is love flowing. Often you hear me say that love lives through you as you, but imagine that love is living through you and every living thing as it, whether it's this plant or this grass or this bird or my dog who's on the floor. The fifth one is wounds dissolving. Today's my mother's birthday, and she's going to be 88. Infinity and infinity, and I think she's going to live forever. And I was reading something yesterday that I thought was interesting. Her mother, I was carried around in her mother's womb. And why is that? Because the eggs that my mother would have to have babies were already formed in utero in her mother. So it's really interesting to look at the effects, that the intergenerational effects that we all have, and the wounds dissolving is really about healing those wounds of that we've inherited, that are called vasanas, that we've inherited and sort of our destiny, and to dissolve those so that we can break free of those limits. And lastly, peace radiating. So I don't have to explain that to you. Just imagine that this whole world is like Eden, this beautiful, peaceful place to live. Maybe we wouldn't all learn our lessons, but maybe we're all done with all of our lessons. Wouldn't that be fun? Anyway, so let's begin our practice. As you know, I often say, if I'm guiding a practice and you're on your own journey, stay with that. However, if you want to do this practice with me, and every time you notice you're thinking about another person, place, or time, just bring your attention back and be kind to yourself throughout this whole practice. We're going to be practicing together about 20 minutes. We're going to guide you into a restful body awareness practice and mindfulness practice, and then we'll start the sutra practice. And for those of you who are just joining us, sutras mean, it comes from the root word stitch, and a sutra practice is simply inviting the intention to permeate our being and to permeate our practice. And we'll do that on the second half of the practice. Be kind to yourself in there. You're going to be doing it correctly, even if you don't feel like it's working for you. And let's see, don't try to have a certain experience other than the one you're having. Okay, so I invite you to get comfortable. You can close your eyes if you like, or you can lower your gaze to your hands or the floor. And I'll be keeping track of the time. And I'll be sounding this chime to begin and end our practice. So with your eyes closed or lowered gaze, you can begin to give yourself some deeper breaths. Breathing in slowly and fully, and letting go of your breath slowly and fully. ideally in and out through your nose. Letting the breath send a signal to your mind and body that it's time to relax. As you take 3 long, slow, deep breaths at your own pace. And then let your breath return to its natural rhythm and depth. You can take a moment and scan your body to be sure you're as comfortable as you can be, feeling the support underneath you and the solid ground under your feet. Feeling the support of the community here that you're with, and those that you live with or your neighbors. And let's open our awareness to the field of sensation. First, becoming aware of the sounds in the environment. Welcoming everything you hear. Not resisting anything or judging any sounds as good or bad or pleasant or unpleasant. Simply bearing witness to the textures of the sounds. And welcoming now the sensations you might be experiencing physically. Noticing sensations such as lightness or heaviness. Or warmth or coolness. Maybe you sense some aliveness. Welcoming whatever you sense. If you notice you're starting to think about the sensations, instead move right toward the experience of the sensations, the textures, the frequency, the intensity. Maybe you feel where your hands are resting in your lap, or the way the body moves with your breath. There may be a calming or a quieting that's happening now. You can turn your attention to your breath. Being curious as to the sensations of the inhale, as the air fills your lungs and your belly expands. And the exhale, feeling the sensation of emptying your lungs, the navel moving toward the spine. There's no particular way to breathe. Just allow yourself to be right here, right now, as you anchor your attention on the breath. You might notice a growing sense of peacefulness. You can even tune in to the pauses between each breath. If there's any turbulence, such as a distressing emotion or a distressing thought, recognize that deeper down there's more peacefulness as you transcend the waves and the ocean. There's a stillness underneath the ocean. Resting in the calmness, disengaging from the anxiety or disturbance. Noticing the way the body responds to the various sensations of breathing. Anytime you notice your attention drifting away from the breath, bring it right back here, right back to this moment, this breath. We'll practice this in silence for a few minutes, and I'll keep track of the time. As you sit here, you may notice that you're feeling more safe and calm. You might feel like you're strong and present. You might feel a sense of contentment or appreciation. Acknowledge that and return your attention to the breath, being sure you're completely relaxed. And now we'll begin to invite the sutras. First, we'll say them to invite these qualities within ourselves. So I'll share the sutra and you can silently repeat it, allowing the ripple effect of it flow through you like throwing a pebble into a still pond and allowing that ripple effect. The first is soul awakening. Heart opening. Light shining. Love flowing. Wounds dissolving. Peace radiating. Now, as we say them again, we can imagine them as a prayer or a blessing for all of these people that you're with, whether they're in your space around you or here on this call with you. Soul awakening. Heart opening. Light shining. Love flowing. Wounds dissolving. Peace radiating. And now bring to mind or heart someone that you know needs a little extra care. Someone's struggling in this moment, physically or mentally, emotionally. You can offer this as a prayer to them. Soul awakening. Heart opening. Light shining. Love flowing. wounds dissolving. Peace radiating. And as we repeat them one more time, imagine this is possible for every living being, everyone in the world, to have these experiences, this reality. Soul awakening. Heart opening. Light shining. Love flowing. Wounds dissolving. And peace radiating. Let's sit in the stillness for another few minutes together, and I'll sound the chime when our meditation period comes to an end. Resting in awareness. So keeping your eyes closed, let's take a few moments to come out of meditation slowly. Perhaps you deepen your breath a little bit, or stretch into the space around you. Become aware of the sounds around you, how you're feeling. And take a moment to appreciate yourself for spending this time creating a big ripple effect of peace in your life and the lives of others. You can slowly begin to open your eyes if you feel like you'd like to do that. First with a downward gaze, letting a little more light in. When you feel like you'd like to open your eyes all the way, feel free to do that at any time, or take your time with your eyes closed. I like to close the practice by bringing my hands together, the prayer position, and thumbs lightly touching the breastbone, and bowing to that loving awareness that lives through you as you, that lives through me as me, that lives through each and every one of us, whether we know it or not. I know it's intelligent and peaceful and dynamic and evolutionary. So thank you for joining me today. James O'Day is an amazing mystic, and this book is called The Soul Awakening Prayer. I highly recommend it. He does a beautiful discourse on each and every one of these sutras. Soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, and peace radiating. So he suggests that you do them 4 times. You can do them each one 4 times, or you can run through the series 4 times. The first would be for yourself. The second would be for those you're with in your environment right here, right now, or those that you're practicing with virtually. The next time could be to all your friends and family. I tend to like to offer it to those I know in my realm that are suffering, to alleviate some of that suffering, because we know what you pay attention to, you have an effect on. And the last one, the 4th time, is to everyone, everywhere. And I include all living beings. So thank you for joining me. You can stop the live stream now if you want. And I'd love to hear anyone wants to share how that practice worked for them and how you're feeling right now. If you'd like to put something in the chat,